The broken girl in chains. The auction yard smelled like oil and blood and old metal, and the air was thick with heat as traders shouted. Prices and slaves cried in silence, and no one cared about their pain. At the far corner near a rusted cage stood a thin alien girl, her skin silver but covered in dust and cuts, and her arms hanging in chains that looked older than her bones. She did not cry, she did not scream, she only stood still like a statue that had given up on being alive. And her eyes were empty like a black hole swallowing light. One trader laughed and pointed at her, saying, "This one is broken, she's not worth a single credit, not even for cleaning. Waste. Maybe just throw her in the scrap." Others laughed too and walked past, not even curious about who she was, or where she came from, or what had broken her so completely that she did not blink when someone kicked the ground near her feet. Then he came, a human man, tall in a torn jacket, his face tired like someone who had fought too many battles and lost more than he had won, but still had fire left in his eyes. He was not looking for a slave or a pet or a worker. He was just walking past, but then he stopped, his eyes locked on the alien girl, and something about her made him freeze. He walked closer while the trader kept laughing, saying, "Don't waste your time with that thing. She hasn't spoken in weeks, maybe never will. She's a lost cause." The man didn't answer. He looked at her face and saw something hidden deep under the dirt. And fear, maybe a memory, maybe a scream trying to rise, maybe a question that had no voice. He asked quietly, "What's her name?" The trader shrugged. "We just call her Scrap. She came from a crashed lab ship, nothing useful left in her. Just a burden." The man stepped closer. The girl didn't move, she didn't even breathe fast. She was like a shadow just waiting to fade. He bent down slowly so he wouldn't scare her and whispered, "Hey, can you hear me?" No answer. He reached into his bag and pulled out a piece of fruit, something sweet and soft and fresh. He placed it on the ground in front of her. Still no reaction, but when he stood up, he saw her eyes flicker for just a second. Not fully, but enough to know she was still inside somewhere behind that silence. "How much?" he asked. The trader laughed again. "For that thing, 1 credit, and I'm still cheating you." The man gave the credit and unlocked the chain himself, while others laughed and pointed and called him crazy or desperate. He didn't care. He wrapped the girl in a light blanket from his bag, but she pushed it away weakly, as if she didn't trust it, didn't trust him, didn't trust anything anymore. He picked her up gently. She was lighter than expected, like a feather filled with pain, and he carried her to his small ship parked nearby. Inside the ship, he laid her on a soft bed and gave her water, but she turned her head away. He tried to speak again, but she only stared at the ceiling like it didn't matter who spoke or what was said. He didn't push her, he just sat down nearby watching, making sure she was safe. Her eyes closed, but he didn't think she was sleeping, just hiding deeper into the dark place inside her. The engines of the ship hummed low, and the stars outside blinked as they lifted off from the outpost and into the black sky. She didn't move, but her fingers curled slightly into the blanket she had pushed away earlier. Maybe without knowing, maybe just from a small spark of warmth, the man leaned back and closed his eyes too, thinking about what he had just done and why he couldn't leave her behind. She was broken, yes, but not useless, not trash, not scrap. Something inside him whispered that she had once been more Something powerful, something precious. And whatever had shattered her had not fully erased that truth. He didn't know her name, he didn't know her story. He only knew one thing: she was not going to be alone anymore, and even if she never spoke, even if she never healed, he would still stay. Because someone had to, and maybe, just maybe, that would be enough to bring her back to the light, to herself, to a world that had thrown her away but couldn't keep her down forever. Not anymore, not while he was here, not while she was still breathing. Even if that breath was silent, even if her soul was hiding, she was still alive, and that was where it would begin. Again, she wouldn't speak a word. The ship moved quietly through the stars, while the alien girl sat curled in the corner, her back against the wall, her arms wrapped around her knees and her eyes staring into nothing. She had not spoken once, not since he brought her aboard, not even a whisper, not even a sound when she moved her head, or shifted her legs, or blinked slowly. Like time meant nothing to her. The human man watched from the pilot's seat, sometimes turning to check if she was still there, as if she might vanish into thin air like a ghost that only needed a little kindness before it disappeared forever. He placed a bowl of warm food near her, not close enough to scare her, but not far enough to ignore it, and then walked away, sitting back in silence, pretending not to look, even though his eyes kept returning again and again. She didn't touch the food. Not that day, not the next, but every time he brought her a new bowl and placed it gently without a word and left her alone with it. On the fourth day, the bowl was empty, not all of it, but the soft parts were gone, and the spoon had moved slightly, as if held by fingers, not sure if they were allowed to feel again. He smiled a little but said nothing. That night she did not sleep in the corner, but moved slowly to a seat near the wall, her back straighter, her head no longer pressed into her arms. Still, she did not speak. She would flinch whenever the engine rumbled too loudly, or when lights flickered, or when he moved too fast. Once, when he reached to close a storage hatch, she scrambled back so fast she hit her head and curled up again, shaking like a leaf in a storm. He didn't come close that time. He just sat down on the floor and placed the toolkit beside him, fixing the panel slowly, without a word, without a sound, without asking her to come back. Hours passed before she uncurled and peeked at him from the shadows, her face still unsure, but less frozen, less locked in fear. On the seventh day, she made a sound, not a word, not even a full noise, just a breath that caught in her throat when she tried to swallow the water he left, and it surprised both of them. He turned quickly, and she froze again, afraid she had broken some silent rule, but he only smiled and nodded once, like saying, "It's okay, take your time." That night he left a small music player on her bed. Soft alien melodies played, like wind and stars and quiet voices. And when he came back later, it was still playing, but her eyes were closed, and her face was calm, not happy, but calm. A crack in the storm. He began to talk after that, not to her but near her, telling stories while he fixed wires or cooked food, stories of stars and battles and strange aliens, and even one about a singing fish that fell in love with a moon. She didn't laugh, but she didn't turn away either. Her fingers would twitch when the funny parts came, and her head would tilt just slightly when he described the planets where the skies burned gold and the grass hummed under your feet. He never asked questions, never asked her name or past, or what happened to her. He only told Her who he was, a soldier who no longer wanted to fight, a traveler without a destination, a man who once saved a bird with a broken wing and now flew with it painted on his ship's hull. She looked at that bird for a long time, one day, standing in front of the painting with her arms crossed and her lips parted just a little. Then she turned and sat back down without saying anything, but he saw something shift in her eyes. One night he cooked her favorite meal again, without knowing it was her favorite, and placed it by her side, then sat across the room like always. This time she picked up the spoon without waiting and began to eat slowly, carefully, like each bite was a test she had to pass. Halfway through the meal she looked at him, just looked, and held his gaze for more than 5 seconds. It was the longest moment they had shared, and it felt louder than any scream. He nodded again and whispered, "You're safe here." She blinked once and whispered back. Not loud, not strong, but enough for him to hear, "Safe." Then silence again. But it was a new silence, a silence with meaning, silence that waited for something more. The broken girl was still quiet, still scarred, still afraid. But now she was listening, and that was the beginning of her voice, a glitch in her mind. The ship drifted slowly through quiet space as stars blinked around them like soft lanterns in the dark, and inside the ship the girl sat on the floor, staring at her hands like they didn't belong to her. She no longer flinched when the human walked by, no longer curled into corners like a shadow trying to disappear, but she still didn't smile, didn't laugh, didn't speak unless she had to, and only whispered when she did. He watched her from the cockpit, quietly reading data from old reports, trying to understand her more, not just who she was, but what had been done to her and what made her so broken. One evening while she slept, curled under a blanket with her face half hidden in folds, he scanned her gently with a handheld med tool, looking for wounds that might still be healing. What he found made his breath catch. Her neural patterns weren't normal. They pulsed and shifted like code, dancing between light and static, and deep inside her brain was something that looked artificial, like a small core embedded where it should not be. He blinked and scanned again, then again, the same result. Someone had modified her, not with scars, not with implants, but with living tech, something fused with her very thoughts, something human science barely understood. He didn't wake her. Instead, he sat on the other side of the room and looked at the results again and again, trying to see what it meant, what she had been used for, and why her memories seemed locked behind invisible walls. The next morning she woke with a small sound like a breath, trying to speak but forgetting how, and she walked slowly toward the cockpit, where he sat and stared at the screen in his hands. She looked at the display and tilted her head as if part of her knew what she was seeing, even though her face remained blank. "Do you remember this?" he asked gently, not expecting an answer. She whispered no, but then her fingers twitched and she pointed at one symbol, a small glowing icon pulsing like a heartbeat. "That one," she said very quietly, then backed away like she had said something dangerous. He nodded and didn't push her. The next day he asked if she would let him run deeper scan, just to help her understand herself more, and after a long silence, she gave a tiny nod. He placed soft sensors along her temples and let the device run. It showed waves and light, and then something strange, a memory flickered on the screen, not clear, not full, just Fragments. A hallway with red lights, a scream in. An alien voice, and then a hand grabbing hers and pulling her through fire. The girl gasped and pulled off the sensors, her whole body shaking, her lips trembling as if a word was stuck in her throat trying to get out. Kale, she whispered, then again louder. Kyle. The name fell from her lips like glass, shattering, and tears rolled down her cheeks, even though her face showed no anger, only confusion, only fear. Who is Kyle? He asked gently. She shook her head again and again. I don't know, but I see him. When I sleep, I see him burning. She fell to her knees, holding her head as the lights in the ship flickered, the same way her neural core was flickering, too, trying to open doors that had been locked too long. He sat beside her, not touching her, just waiting until her breathing slowed and her fingers stopped shaking. She looked up at him with wide eyes and said, I was in a lab, I think. I was made, not born, and they changed me. I was supposed to heal people. He nodded slowly and asked, who made you? She looked down, then whispered, I don't know their names, but they wore the same mark as that icon on your screen. They said I was perfect until I failed, then they erased me. The words came slow and broken, but real, like ice melting for the first time in years. You didn't fail, he said softly. They broke something inside you, but it can be fixed, not by me, not by tools, but maybe by time and truth. She stared at him and whispered again, I'm not human. Am I? He smiled gently. No, you're not. But that doesn't make you less. You're not a machine either, even if they tried to turn you into one. She nodded slowly and wiped her face with her sleeve, then said something neither of them expected. If I was made to heal, can I still help you? He looked surprised by me. She reached out slowly, placing her hand near his chest where a deep scar ran under his shirt. This pain you carry, it hurts even when you smile. He blinked, unable to speak for a moment. Maybe she was broken, but maybe she was the only one who could see what others couldn't. The glitch in her mind was not just a scar, it was a door, and now it was starting to open. Voices from her past. The stars outside were still and cold as the ship drifted near a forgotten asteroid belt where signals faded and scanners went blind, and the world felt far away. Inside the ship, the girl stood in front of the mirror for a long time, her hands pressed lightly against the glass as if trying to remember the face looking back at her. Her silver skin had begun to shine again, bruises fading, the dark rings under her eyes not so deep, but her expression was still quiet, still unsure, like she wasn't sure who she was becoming. The human man walked in holding a small tray of food. He stopped when he saw her reflection, and for the first time he didn't say anything. She looked at him through the mirror and whispered, Am I real? He placed the tray down and walked closer, standing behind her but not touching her, letting her ask what she needed to ask. I remember voices, she said, not faces, just voices calling me. Subject 12 calling me healer, then failure, then weapon. He stayed silent, then she turned and looked at him directly, her voice stronger now but still soft. But someone else called me Kalen. He blinked. That's a name, not a number. She nodded slowly. I think that's who I was before they took it from me. Maybe Kale was saying my name in his last breath, not calling for help but calling me. He sat down slowly on the bench near the wall, watching her as she moved carefully toward the control console, her fingers hovering over buttons she Had never been taught to use, but somehow understood. She pressed one end. The screen flickered, showing encrypted fragments of old files from a hidden drive buried deep in the ship system. He leaned forward. Where did you find that? It was already here, she said, quiet. Again, maybe you didn't see it, but I did when I touched the ship last night. It whispered to me. The file opened, halfway showing corrupted logs from a military transport. A lab ship lost 5 years ago, one used for medical testing on alien DNA mixed with artificial programming. Her name was there, Kaylin. Unit 12 Experimental Class Biome Path. Support Model. The words hit like knives. She stepped back, shaking her head slowly like someone trying to deny a truth she already knew. They made me to save soldiers. She said I could fix wounds with a touch, repair bones, stopped bleeding, but only if I obeyed. What happened to the others? He asked. Gently, her breath caught as her mind pulled more pieces from the dark. They died, she whispered, soft as wind on glass. They pushed me too far, asked me to heal the dying with no rest, no food, just power again and again until my mind broke. And Kale, he asked. She looked down, her hands trembling again. He was one of them, a soldier who didn't treat me like a tool. He gave me a name. He gave me a reason to smile. He died protecting me when they tried to reset my mind. I remember screaming. I remember fire. I remember running. The man reached out slowly, not to grab her, but to offer his hand. And she didn't step back. This time she placed her hand in his and let it stay. You don't have to remember everything at once, he said, just enough to know you're more than what they made you. That night she dreamed again, but this time the dream was clearer. She saw Kale's face, blurry but warm, and she heard him say, "Don't let them take your name." She woke up crying, not from fear, but from something deeper. Something like loss and hope mixed together. The next morning, something strange happened. The ship's sensors picked up a ping, not a normal one, but a hidden signal bouncing through old military codes. The man checked the screen, frowning. Someone is scanning this sector using ghost tech. She looked at the data and her face turned pale. That code, it's from the lab ship. It means they know I'm still alive. He turned the ship engines on and began to move fast, weaving through the asteroid field, trying to stay hidden, but he could feel the hunt beginning. You said they erased you, he asked. Did they do that to hide what you became or to stop what you remembered? She stared at him, then at the stars ahead. I think I was the only one who escaped, and now they're afraid of what I might tell. We have to move, he said. But she shook her head. Not yet. I need to know the rest. I need to remember what they were hiding inside me. He hesitated but then nodded. You have one day, then we run. She agreed, and in the quiet corner of the ship she sat, cross-legged, eyes closed, whispering names, whispering places, whispering a war buried inside her mind. And somewhere far behind them, in a dark corner of the galaxy, a figure in a black cloak read the signal and smiled coldly. Subject 12 has been found. Prepare the retrieval team. Alive or broken, we want her back. Someone wants her back. The ship floated in silence near a blue gas giant, its ring spinning slowly like the ticking of a great clock. And inside the small cabin, the air felt heavier than usual. The girl sat on the floor, eyes closed, head lowered, her silver fingers resting against her knees as if listening to a voice no one else could Here, the human stood at the window, watching the sky change colors orange to violet to deep red, knowing something was coming, something that would not stop just because they were quiet or hidden. She opened her eyes and said, softly, they're coming, I feel them. He turned toward her. How do you know? I don't know, she answered, not with words, not with logic, but I feel it in my chest like an old code waking up like a warning I can't explain. He walked to the console, checking scans and pulses. Nothing yet, no ships, no noise. But she was certain, and so was he. Deep inside, his gut told him to trust her. He asked if she could still connect to that memory core inside her, the one that showed the military logs. Maybe it held something useful, a way to stop them. Weakness they didn't expect. She nodded slowly but said, it's dangerous. I don't know what else is buried there. If I push too far, I might lose control. He said, I'll stay with you, even if you fall, I'll catch you, even if it breaks you, I'll be here. Her hand trembled, but she smiled for the first time, a small sad smile like a flower blooming in the cold, and she said, then I'll try. They blinked her mind to the ship's AI slowly, carefully, not through force but through trust, and the screen lit up with flashes of memory, more clear this time, more painful too. She gasped as images burned behind her eyes. Cages, metal rooms, needles in her arms. Machines feeding commands into her head. Over and over, like she was not a person. Just a program wearing skin. But then came another memory, one she had not seen before, a message recorded secretly by someone else. Kale's voice, soft and hurried, played from the speaker. If you're hearing this, Kalen, it means you survived. I don't know how, I don't know where, but I believe in you. They tried to erase you, but I hid this inside you. Your real code, your free mind. If you can find it, you'll be stronger than all of them. The girl fell back, breathing hard, the lights in the room flickering as her pulse raced faster than the engines, and she clutched her chest, whispering again and again, I'm not their weapon, I'm not their toy. I'm not theirs. The human knelt beside her, held her hand and said, then be yours. Choose your own way, choose who you are, now. Outside the ship, a signal burst through space like a sharp whistle, cutting through stars and the screens. Lit up with danger, 3 ships approaching, no IDs, no names, but the weapons were clear. They found us, he said, pulling up shields, powering thrusters. They're locking on. I can run, or I can fight, your choice. She stood slowly, her body shaking, but her eyes clear and sharp. They want me back, she said, but I'm not going back. Not in chains, not in silence. What do you want to do? He asked. Her voice was calm and strong. Let me speak to them. He hesitated. Are you sure? She nodded. I need to face them. I need to break the chain myself. They opened a channel and her image appeared on the enemy screens. Her face steady, her voice controlled. This is Subject 12, she said. You called me that when I was too weak to fight back. But now I remember. Now I know who I am. The enemy voice answered, cold and sharp. You belong to us. You are property. Protocol demands retrieval. Her reply was a single word. No. She raised her hand, and the energy inside her body lit up, glowing lines along her arms and neck. The biowar fully awakened, now no longer glitching, no longer broken. The human ship systems synced with her pulse, his weapons charged by her will, and the shields grew brighter, powered by something more than tech, powered by choice. The enemy ships Fired, but their shots bent away like light in a storm. And she raised her other hand, releasing a wave of sound and light that fried their systems. Mid-flight, one ship turned and ran. The other two drifted dead in space. She dropped to her knees, breathing heavy. But her smile returned, and this time it reached her eyes. He ran to her, held her up, asked if she was okay. She nodded. I think I finally took something back, he whispered. What? She looked at him and said, my freedom. The final trigger. The ship floated through the quiet air of a dying system where stars flickered like candles ready to fade, and time moved slower, like it was holding its breath. Inside the ship, the alien girl stood in the middle of the room, her eyes closed, her arms outstretched, and her skin glowing with light that pulsed softly like a heartbeat learning to flow, not from fear but from control. The human watched from the doorway, not speaking, just watching the way she stood, strong, not shaking, not flinching, not hiding anymore. She opened her eyes and looked at him, and her voice came firm and calm. I can feel it now, not just pain, not just memory, but something deeper, something waiting inside me all this time. He nodded slowly. You're not afraid anymore. She shook her head. I was afraid of myself, afraid of what they made me, but not anymore. Now I want to understand it. I want to use it, not for them, not for war, but for me. He said, then let's find a place where you can practice without limits. And together they flew to a quiet desert moon hidden beyond sensor range, a place forgotten by most, with nothing but rock, wind, and sky. She stepped out onto the sand, barefoot, silver skin shining in the twin suns, and she took a deep breath, like it was her first, like the air itself belonged to her. Now he placed a beacon nearby, just in case something went wrong, and then stepped back, giving her space, giving her trust. She raised her hands and called the energy forward, not in panic but in focus, and light formed between her fingers, shaping into threads, into patterns, into power. Suddenly her eyes flashed gold, and she whispered a word, not from this language, not from Earth, not from any manual he had ever read, and the sand around her lifted into the air, floating weightless for a moment, then gently falling back like soft rain. He smiled and clapped, but before he could speak, the beacon behind him began to scream, red lights flashing, a signal bouncing off the rocks nearby. Incoming ship fast, no ID, high power. She turned, eyes narrowing, not afraid, not anymore. The ship came down like thunder, shaking the ground, black metal and red markings across its hull. Symbols, she remembered symbols from the lab, from the worst nights. She whispered, it's them, but not the same. Not soldiers, this is someone higher, someone darker. The ramp opened, and a tall figure stepped down, wrapped in armor, smooth and silent. Not a soldier, not a scientist, something in between. His voice was like ice when he spoke. Kylan, he said, you are property of Genesis. Command, return now and you will be spared. Return now and your friend may live. The human stepped forward between them. No, she's not going anywhere. The figure tilted his head, then moved too fast, faster than the eye could follow, and slammed the human to the ground with a single blow. The girl screamed, and the desert shook. Her power cracked the ground, her eyes blazing gold, her voice no longer soft. Don't touch him, the figure laughed. You are not stable, you are always flawed. They will never accept you, and neither will the humans. They fear what they can't control. She stepped forward, her feet burning. The sand beneath her and the light around her body turned brighter than the sun. You fear what you can't break, she said. He charged again, fast like a shadow through flame, but this time she didn't move away. She moved through him, her hand touching his chest and releasing a blast of pure energy from her palm. The armor cracked, his body flew back and hit the ship hard enough to dent the hull, but he stood again. Smoking, bruised, still alive, he snarled, "You are just coat and flesh. Ghost in a failed shell." She replied, "Maybe, but I'm not your ghost anymore." She raised both hands and the sky turned white, lightning from her core, arcing upward into the clouds and down again into the enemy ship, cooking its systems from the inside. The figure looked up one last time, then vanished in a burst of emergency light. And the ship went silent, then exploded into fire and dust. She dropped to her knees, exhausted, chest heaving, face pale but eyes still burning bright. The human crawled toward her, bleeding but smiling, still alive thanks to her. He held her hand and said, "You didn't just fight him, you ended something today." She whispered, "No," began something. And for the first time she felt free. Not because she ran, but because she stood, because she chose, because her will was finally her own. Her worth was never measured in credits. The wind on the desert moon had turned soft and warm, and the sky above held the quiet colors of dawn, glowing orange and silver like it had waited years to welcome her. The alien girl stood on the cliff with her arms crossed over her chest, her hair moving gently with the breeze, and her eyes watching the horizon, not in fear, not in sorrow, but in peace. Behind her, the human man walked slowly, still holding his side where the armored figure had struck him days ago, but his smile was strong and real because he knew the war inside her was over. She turned to him and asked softly, "Do you really think it's done?" He nodded, "Not because danger is gone, but because you are not running anymore." And she smiled, not the small broken smile from before, but something full, something alive. They stayed on the moon for 3 more days, and each day she learned more about herself, not just her powers, not just her memories, but her own choices, her likes, her thoughts, her future. She liked quiet music in the morning and spicy food and warm blankets and watching stars through the window while sitting in silence, and he learned those things without asking because he watched her, not like a machine, not like a weapon, but like a person. On the 4th day she brought him a small metal plate from the wreck of the enemy ship, the one she destroyed, and handed it to him carefully, her fingers wrapped around the edge like it was sacred. "It has their command seal," she said. "If I give this to the right people, they'll know Genesis is still alive, still making things like me." He asked what she wanted to do with it. She said, "I want to give it to someone who can stop them, not with weapons, but with truth." He nodded and said, "Then we go." Together, the two of them returned to orbit and set course for a neutral world, one where war didn't touch every wall and lies didn't shape every law, and where voices still mattered. During the flight, she looked out the window often, and once she asked him something unexpected, "Do you think I'll ever be normal?" He didn't laugh and he didn't lie. He just said, "I don't know what normal means, but I think you're already real, and that's better." When they landed, people stared at her. Not because she was beautiful, not because she glowed, but because she walked beside him with her head held high, like she belonged, like she had always Belonged, they met with the Galactic Truth Council and she placed the medal plate on the table, then told them everything, not as a number, not as a lab tool, not as a ghost, but as Kaylin, a girl who had survived and remembered and healed. She didn't cry when she spoke, she didn't tremble, and when she was done, no one moved for a full minute. After the meeting, she walked out into the public square and saw children playing, aliens and humans together laughing without fear, and she watched them with soft eyes. He stood beside her and said, "What are you thinking?" She replied, "I think I want to stay." He looked surprised. "Stay here?" "No," she said. "Stay with you." His heart beat faster. But he didn't speak, he just waited. She stepped closer, her silver fingers reaching for his hand gently, like it was fragile, like it mattered more than power, more than freedom, more than survival. "You didn't save me because I was useful," she said. "You saved me because I was forgotten and you remembered me." He said, "I didn't know what I was doing, I just couldn't leave you there. That's what made it real." She whispered. They didn't need to say more. They traveled together after that, not running, not hiding, just exploring stars and learning how to live again. Sometimes she healed people in small towns for no reward, just a soft thank you and a smile, and each time she did, her light grew stronger. But not because of tech, not because of code, because of kindness, because of choice. One day, a trader who once laughed at her in chains passed her on a spaceport and didn't recognize her, and she didn't stop him. She didn't speak. She just smiled to herself. He had seen a broken girl once and walked away, but the man beside her had seen something different, not a price tag, not a problem, but a soul. She had never belonged to anyone, but now she chose where to be, and she chose to walk beside the one man who never measured her worth in credits, only in care, only in courage.